Shalom and welcome to Jerusalem Studio. After 12 days of intensive fighting between the State of Israel and the Islamic Republic of Iran, with, of course, the United States also joining in to target specifically the heavily fortified Fordo Natanz and Isfahan nuclear installations, U.S. President Donald Trump has managed to broker a sort of cessation of hostilities, which may be fragile, but nonetheless is being currently upheld. And to discuss now what are the steps ahead in light of the continued efforts by the international community at large, the United States and Israel in particular, to ensure that Iran will never attain nuclear weapons capabilities. We will discuss this matter together with our distinguished expert for today, to include Colonel in Reserve Miri Eisen, who formerly served as an advisor at the Prime Minister's office here in Jerusalem, a senior officer at the IDF Intelligence Directorate, currently a senior fellow at the ICT at Reichman University. Great to see you, Colonel. Also joining us.
Thank you, Jonathan. Wonderful to be here.
It is indeed wonderful to have you with us. Also joining us is Dr. Olli Heinonen, formerly the Deputy Director General of the International Atomic Energy Agency, or IAEA, currently a distinguished fellow at Stimson Center in Washington, D.C., that is. It's great to see you, sir.
Thank you.
And I'd like to start with you, Colonel Eisen, since obviously the last several days, including the last 24 hours at that, have been quite dramatic. And therefore, I'd like to give you a little bit of an opportunity to articulate what have we just experienced in those last 24 hours after a truly high-intensity, deliberate campaign that has brought about the successful achievement of all of Israel's declared objectives.
It's almost impossible for me to actually think I'm about to say that Israel for 12 days has air superiority over the Islamic Republic of Iran in Iran. That what we have done is attacked, targeted in a very specific way, 5 different categories of targets. And in the last 24 hours, we continued to attack the same types of targets, meaning we continued to attack nuclear sites also after the big US attack. We continued to target the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, high functionaries. We're talking about top operatives, the ones both who were working with the proxies in the area, but also the ones who were leading what the Iranian Revolutionary Guard call the air and space arena, which for me on the Israeli side is the missiles and drones. They continue to fire these against us. And as I say, in our targeting, that aspect of air superiority allowed us to continue to target anywhere in Iran, from the west to the east, and I should say from the north to the south, a variety of military, Iranian Revolutionary Guard, air and space, air defense, nuclear targets. The Islamic regime targeted Israel in the last hour or two before the ceasefire was supposed to come into control, and killed Israelis in the city of Beersheba. When you get to the end on the cusp of a ceasefire here in the Middle East, we know, certainly us in Israel, that it is shaky time. So we're still at the shaky time of the ceasefire. But Israel has shown the vulnerability, or I would even say the exposure of the lack of Islamic regime's capability to be able to really follow through with the 2 main investments that they've invested over in the last 25 years. None of their proxies came forward, and in their missiles and drones, single drones got into Israel, only one actually did any damage, and in the missiles, heartbroken by those who were killed, injured, a lot of material damage, but at the end, we mainly intercepted them, and we're standing very strong as I speak.
Thank you, Colonel Eisen, for articulating this so well. Dr. Heinonen, before this operation, we were focused on delivery systems, know-how, infrastructure, very large quantities of highly enriched uranium, to include over 430 kilograms of up to 60% purity levels of U-235. I mean, everything was indicative of Iran's near breakout, so to speak, towards the capacity to assemble all of its various pieces together into an actual nuclear device. I'd like to ask you to characterize to us at this point in time, following initial assessments of BDA that you have had the opportunity to evaluate, namely the battle damage assessments to those different aspects. Let's start actually with the know-how. Many of the nuclear scientists have been eliminated, particularly the ones that are related to the assembly. To what degree does that degrade Iran's capacity to reassemble, if you may, the various components to attain nuclear weapon capabilities?
Thank you. We know those people who have been killed, at least in public. But I would divide these people to two different categories. One is the leadership, people who do the designs and leaders, and then other engineers who get their hands dirty and produce those items. And those names which I have seen there in the public are mainly from the leadership and design part. We don't have any public knowledge that what about those engineers who were actually producing, let's say, high explosives, electronics, testing them in practice? Were they also targeted or not? I have seen, from the publications who were involved, some have perished, but I think that there are still a lot of these lower level technical people who are there. How motivated they are, that's one thing. And do they have all the tools which they need to go on? And the tools I would divide in three categories. First is the fissile material, which we probably address here a little bit later, the high-energy uranium. And then the explosives and electronics and testing, if they still need to do, and where are the components of possible weapons. And then I think that I'm not the expert to tell very much about the status of the missile program to that end, those missiles which could have been designed to carry nuclear warheads. So we have a bunch of open questions. And for me, it means that if we really want to drill to the bottom of this program and to confirm that it has been erased, I think that the IAEA team alone cannot do it. One has also to have the team looking at the missiles and make sure that all the information related to development and manufacturing of the re-entry vehicle, which can carry nuclear weapons, is taken care and make sure that those capabilities are not there and those will be monitored. So this is what I suggest is a kind of multidisciplinary approach where you have nuclear people, you have weaponization people, high explosives, electronics, guidance, and then missile people together, which put this palette together because these are all unseparated triplets. When you build a nuclear weapon, all this need to be taken into account. And if you leave two of them there existing without dismantlement and verification, then the only one piece is missing and this can be easily reconstituted. So this is what I see as an approach.
Thank you, Dr. Heinonen. Colonel Eisen, first, we do know that part of the, at least part of the uranium was stored by the Iranians in the tunnels in Isfahan, which were struck, of course, by the Tomahawk missiles that managed to penetrate and really destroy Isfahan quite effectively. But nonetheless, there is speculation about the high-enriched uranium as well as other quantities of this material being in Fordo at the time of the strike, and also other aspects that relate to the enriched uranium. To what degree, despite the BDA, of course, we're being too early in assessing truly the scope or the success of the scope of the damage that was established here, To what degree do you, with your expertise in this issue as well, are able to be optimistic?
I'm breathing in deep because we really are at an early stage. So I'm going to give you my challenge and my response. There's no question that the sites that were attacked are heavily damaged, and we still have to figure out how much so. I'm more worried about what was taken out of the sites. At the end, the Islamic regime of Iran does not usually sit around and, excuse my English, and twiddle their thumbs. Everybody was talking about the possibility, both of Fordo and of Isfahan and of Natanz, of the American going in. I think that the Islamic regime miscalculated. Having said that, I don't know if they were in that sense of a mind to move at least the material that they'd already made, which doesn't take a lot of room, and it's not radioactive. I'd say it's more chemical toxic. It could be moved, so I'm going to worry about that. And now I'm going to be optimistic, and I don't mean to be overly optimistic. I think that we can all see that after the last 12 days, that the Israeli capabilities of gathering intelligence, of targeting, of knowing where things are, of finding people not from the past, but from the present, in the different specific places that they were, from the commander of the Revolutionary Guard, the commander of the Air and Space, the director of the nuclear projects. I think that I want to hope that those capabilities are capabilities that we'll know how to use in case they did manage to take out that material. So I'm saying it's a possibility. And I think that we are not going to be sitting around twiddling our thumbs and letting them do so without trying to follow the path.
Dr. Heinonen, during a Board of Governors emergency meeting on this issue, IAEA Director General Rafael Grossi said as follows: "We must return to the negotiating table, and for that, that allows the IAEA inspectors, the guardians, so to speak, on our behalf of the NPT, the Non-Proliferation Treaty, namely, to go back to Iran's nuclear sites and account for the stockpiles of uranium, including, most importantly, the 400 kilograms of enriched to 60%. I want to be optimistic about something like this taking place, but I'm a little pessimistic about the Iranians being so outwardly accepting in the current circumstances, so to speak.
Yes, this depends pretty much on this understanding on this temporary ceasefire and what will follow after that. And IAEA needs to have the support, authority to do it. It probably needs to augment the teams from routine safeguards in order to be able to do it. Because, first of all, these places where they have to go, they are still dangerous. You know, there could be unexploded ordnances. You have to climb over the rubble to confirm that which are the materials down there. Buildings have been collapsed or are about to collapse. And then you need to have the cooperation from Iran, that they support you in this work. You need tools, you need maybe bulldozers, you may need many other things. And in particular, you need teams which make sure that all the ordnances, which still might be there, we don't know exactly what was bombed and using which kind of material are there, so that this can be done in a safe way. And then analysis of this material takes time. It's not just, someone goes with a Geiger-Müller device and measures that, oh yes, this is radioactive. You need to find what it is, what's the chemical form. Is this part of this, or is it part of this 400 kilograms? And then where is the 400 kilograms? I think that when Foreign Minister Arachi went to public and said that they plan to move it away, at least most of it, I think, that is probably in a safe place. I start with that. And are they willing to present it in its totality? That is one of the first things which the IAEA has to do. And if material is missing, where it is and why it is missing. And then at the very end also, let's not forget, they may have had a secret small installation, even though the intelligence is very, very good in Iran when people are monitoring it outside. So that will be time consuming. And then there's one more change which needs to come to this picture. IAEA has to have an access to real scientists, not officials from foreign ministry or atomic energy organization, but people who were working with these materials, people who were running the equipment, people who put it together. By interviewing them, you get a better understanding. Is that what they say? Has it really taken place or not? And where are deficiencies if there are? And then you have to find a way to solve it. So this will take time. And I think that the approach could be perhaps similar what we had in South Africa when we went in 1994 to verify the dismantled weapons program. We put first a target to one significant quantity during first year of investigation, and we were able to say that yes, there is a uncertainty in the inventory of high-enriched uranium in South Africa, but the quantity is less than what is needed for their design of nuclear weapon. And then in the second year and third year, we were drilling deeper, and we were able to reduce the uncertainties to tolerable level. So this is what is faced here, and I hope that the IAEA takes somewhat similar approach and learns from the past experiences, and member states support that exercise, because this will help to bring peace and security to Middle East.
It's important that it will come from you, and therefore I'll ask you this. You can answer just briefly by a yes or confirm. So just to clarify, the IAEA has not received access to the actual nuclear scientists, so to speak, who have been engaged in the project itself when we're talking about nuclear enrichment all the way to the various nuclear installations.
I think that they have seen some of them, particularly during period of 2003 until 2009. We had fairly good access to these people. But then I think that the way I read, the IAEA reports, I think that they were pretty much replaced from there on, with the other people, which are government officials, not interpreters, but intermediated. You ask a question from some person that goes to the scientist and gives the answer back. So you don't get the kind of fluid conversation. I may be wrong, but this is the way I read the language in the IAEA reports. And one example of that is that the IAEA wanted to meet with the late Mr. Fakhrizadeh. And it was all set up, the meeting, for September 2008. But the Iranians, in the last minute, cancelled it. Our team was already on the way to Tehran. And I think that after that, we started to lose more and more contact with the real experts.
Very alarming, to say the least. But Colonel Eisen, U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance came out and stated in an interview to Fox News, to Brett Baier, actually, well, we have obliterated the Iranian nuclear program. Our hope and our expectation is that they're not going to try to rebuild that program. Now, the Iranians have already come out and stated that they have a right to enrich uranium, and they intend to continue doing that, irrespective of the damage caused by the American attacks and the Israeli attacks at that. What can be done to ensure that the Iranians do not pursue this, knowing full well that political will is not always on the side of enforcing such a reality?
First of all, it's going to be difficult, but I will say that there's a delicate balance here. The Iranians are signed on the NPT, on the Non-Proliferation Treaty. They are participants in that sense, and they're supposed to be on board, both with having the inspectors, with having somebody come there, with somebody supervising, because they're only doing it for civilian use, I say with a slight sarcastic accent. And I say that because they have said over the last few weeks that they would leave the NPT. And then in its own way, you get a different kind of sanctions, but you don't get supervision. So in this case, I'm going to say that it's a very delicate balance of what the Iranians are going to be letting in. But I have to say, as an Israeli, that for the last 15 years, I mean, as I've been following this subject, and I am not the expert on this subject, I've been looking at it much more from the Islamic regime's point of view and not from the nuclear point of view, that ideology, which is so deep, is still there. And it's clear that they not only want nuclear weapons and say that they have a right for nuclear weapons, but they've put it onto a pedestal as something which is everything that they need to have. And in its own, and what that means is what we need to have, and I say it sadly, is what Israel did over the last 12 days, which means that we have absolute air superiority and that we can target in a very sophisticated, specific way those who are both responsible and the different sites. I think that we've made a big difference when it comes to the platforms, missiles, and any airplanes if they had, because those are all gone. But in addition, it's trying to follow the sites, the intelligence on the sites, exposing that to the world. I don't know of a better way to do so right now. And so it's keeping the finger there, making sure that we can do what we can, and yet not believing the Iranians as we go forward.
Yes, that would be helpful, to say the least. We're drawing near to the end of the program, and I'd like to ask Dr. Heinonen if you may keep it short on this one, and we'll try and preserve some time also for Colonel Eisen. But snapback. How viable is the snapback mechanism being re-implemented or triggered for the sake of re-implementing all of the various sanctions that have been slapped upon Iran since 2006 to 2010? Of course, within that context, one of the clauses has, of course, under a UN Security Council resolution, frustrate Iran's rights to enrich uranium, among others, as one of the outcomes that were, of course, demanded by the United States and Israel in the prosecution of diplomatic discourse.
It's important, but it comes with the but. And the but is time is of essence. You need to make sure that those capabilities have been removed. But it takes long time before sanctions have an effect, such an effect that Iran will decide to give up if it has such kind of intentions. So I'm afraid that we are coming a little bit late to this business of snapback sanctions.
And when it comes to the NPT, naturally, we just heard Colonel Eisen speaking about that. To what degree has the Majlis, or the Iranian parliament, that is, the capacity to convince the supreme leader, if he still exists, since nobody has heard of him since the war has ended, to really bring an end to the or the revocation of its signature as part of the Non-Proliferation Treaty?
Leaving of NPT is not an easy decision. Let's be fair. First of all, if you follow legally, you have to give a notice to the depositories of the treaty 100 days before you leave. So then you have 100 days time when in principle IAEA can exist, and you enter if they are allowed, and the member states can use various measures to stop the process. And if you still leave, like North Korea did, then finally he left. They started to leave twice, 1994 and then finally in early 2003. It had a lot of consequences. And economy, all the exports, imports, they will be jeopardized, which means that there will be more and more hardship to people of Iran who have been suffering tremendously in past years, and now they see the price they have paid. So it's not going to be an easy decision. And then, okay, now Parliament decides something, then it goes to their National Supreme Security Council for debate, and then finally comes the proposal to the spiritual leader. So this is a multi-step process, and we are in a very early stage, unless they have done this all quietly behind.
Indeed. Well, Colonel Eisen, naturally, Israel has achieved its objectives when we're talking about the nuclear program, when we're talking about the delivery, in context, of course, to the ballistic missiles. But the hope of pretty much everybody who has been dealing with this portfolio was the byproduct, potential fall of the regime. To what degree can we be optimistic that in the weeks and months ahead, something like this could still occur? In 1 minute, please.
The Islamic regime has been exposed, that over the last 25 years, their biggest investments in the Iranian Revolutionary Guard and the nuclear and in their proxies, neither one of them had any capability when push came to shove. That's something that the Iranian people know. Can they stand up? It's a barbaric regime. This regime is not going to let that happen easily. But I do think we'll see other voices. I want to hope it for them, but I shouldn't say that I'm holding my breath just because this barbaric regime will use anything in its toolbox, first and foremost domestically, to survive this domestically.
Which is its top priority, its own survivability naturally, and therefore it has also reached the cessation of hostility in the first place, since if it was not in the worst stage that it has found itself since 1979, it would have not pursued any type of ceasefire. But Colonel Miri Eisen and Dr. Olli Heinonen, thank you so very much for all of your insights. I'd like to thank all of you at home as well. Until our next edition from here in Jerusalem, Shalom.
Shalom, I'm Danny Ayalon, former Israeli ambassador to the United States, former deputy foreign minister and member of Knesset. Today, I'm very privileged to be hosting TV7's Middle East Review and also being a panelist of the various shows of TV7, which I find the most enlightening, most educating if you really want to understand the world, the global scene as well as the regional scene of the Middle East. It is worthwhile to watch TV7.
For more of TV7's productions and editorials, we invite you to visit our website at www.tv7israelnews.com.
Jerusalem Studio, now available on Spotify.